Located in the San Francisco Bay Area in southeastern Sonoma County is the valley considered the birthplace of the California wine industry. A proper tour of the Sonoma Valley begins on the Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley. Whether you are a seasoned wine enthusiast, a novice, a sommelier, or a history buff, the Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley offers an informative overview of the valley during a fun, friendly, relaxing, carefree day. The Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley is a 6-hour adventure aboard a replica California cable car. Your hand-built cable car is based on the original blueprints from the San Francisco cable cars that were in operation from the 1890s through the 1930s. It is an all-wooden carriage, detailed right down to the brass bell. Your conductor on the guided Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley will explain the history, legacies, and folklore as you travel the Green Valley from vineyard to vineyard. The Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley is a group-friendly event that encourages making new friends along the way. A day on the Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley includes a catered picnic lunch and a visit to 4 selected wineries for a taste of the treasures of Sonoma.
Mexico owned California 1600s, 1700s, and the mid-1800s. Come right over here. Mid-1800s. They set a series of 21 missions in California to link California together. They did it with the help of the Franciscan monastery, the Franciscan monks. They did it so each mission could be gone to from one mission to the next with a one-day ride. They did it with a highway that connected all of them together. The very first mission was set up in San Diego, and the last mission was set up right here in this plaza, and it's right next door, right there. It's that building right next door. They wanted to fortify this mission, turn it into a working plaza, working pueblo, just in case the Russians who were living up north, who set up a mission up at Fort Ross, decided to come down and overtake this mission and kind of overtake California, because the Mexicans didn't have a big police force here. They enlisted a man by the name of Lieutenant General Viejo to come up from Presidio in San Francisco and turn it into a working town. And that's the gentleman right there. He brought his wife and himself and his family up, right here, up from San Francisco, and turned this into a working town, a working pueblo. Modeled it after a Spanish plaza and modeled it after a Roman village. Did it on his own dime, brought all the Mexican army with him, and turned this into a working plaza. And he brought in all the agriculture that you see here today, and actually started the very first wine country, helped start the wine country with started the very first winery, which is Buena Vista Winery. Viejo got together with a man by the name of Agustín Hardesty, a self-proclaimed aristocrat from San Diego. He got kicked out of San Diego, came up here, met Hardesty. Met Viejo. Hardesty and Viejo got together. Hardesty's 2 sons married Viejo's 2 daughters. They became partners in crime, and Viejo gave him mission vines. And that gentleman started Buena Vista Winery, which is the very first winery started in California. Then Viejo went over to Napa, which wasn't called Napa then, and gave vines to a group of 12 farmers who started a land trust over in Napa Valley. And those 12 farmers started making wine over there, and that was Camus Ranch. The gentleman that led that spearhead was a man by the name of George Yount, hence the name Yountville. All right? Before all that happened, there was a bunch of other things going on here. Viejo was building the land up here, developing the land. This mission started out at 200 people when it first started. It ended with 1,300 people after this historical incident happened. Wow. During this period, he was developing all the land. Other guys were developing the land. A lot of agriculture was being developed here. President Polk, back in the mid-1800s, wanted to overtake California and make California its last territory to conquer and for the whole United States. So he enlisted 2 gentlemen, John Fremont and Kit Carson, to come out from the East Coast. They had already trailblazed this whole area out here, and he wanted them to go to Sacramento and start an uprising. He didn't want anyone to know that the Americans were doing it, because he was already fighting with Santa Anna over in Texas. So these guys came out here and started an uprising. A bunch of guys in the mountains around here heard about it. They got together, they banded together, they called themselves the Ojos, the Bears. They got together with Kit Carson and Fremont, and on June 14th, 1846, they painted on a white sheet a star. a bear, and the word republic. They rode into this plaza. It's known as the Bear Flag Revolt. They took over the plaza. They asked the Mexicans to leave. They took Viejo captive and his wife captive and his family captive. And we became our own country for 21 days. 21 days later, the American government rode into the plaza and took over the plaza, and we became the 31st territory of the United States of America. Now, President Polk had an issue. You only had 30,000 people living in California. How does he populate California? He creates the Manifest Destiny, has everyone move out west. No one takes up the Manifest Destiny. No one starts moving out this way. Then someone found gold in our hills, and we became, we went from 30,000 people to 300,000 people within 5 years, and we became the 31st state of the United States of America. This gentleman, Viejo, broke away from the Mexican government because he never was really in allegiance to the Mexican government because he was born in Monterey, California. He seized the day, became the largest landowner in California. He helped form California and lay out what California looked like and what it was. Like I said, brought in all the vines, brought in all the agriculture, really did a lot of good for California. Became a senator and a governor of California at one point. The government thanked him by giving him 600,000 acres of land, and that's the town of Vallejo. His wife, Benicia, got pissed off. She wanted a town named after her, so they gave her the town of Benicia. She should have had it because she had 16 kids.
Wow, she had a town herself.
She had a town herself, it's true. He is basically the godfather of California. His home that was sitting next to us right there in between the cheese factory and here actually burnt down. It was a 2-story house. It actually burnt down. He never rebuilt it in that same place. He moved into the foothills of Sonoma. He went to the East Coast, tore down a Victorian mansion, numbered each little piece of wood, put it on a train, and mailed it back, and drove it back here, and put it back together here.
Where is this?
It's in the back of the foothills of Sonoma, right over the back, next to the general's daughter and Viejo's home back there. It's back there. It's a really nice home. He's the godfather of California, and everything you see around here is because of him.
start getting put into their wines before that fruit is even off the vine. Okay? Once down here, some would classify this as primitive or pre-turn of the century farming, since we're not using machinery, we're not using chemicals. But what happens down here, welcome to 21st century state-of-the-art equipment. Okay? Part two of the story, this is where winemakers continue to put their fingerprints on the styles of their wines, and now they are insisted by, yes, man-made equipment and man-made machinery, but that doesn't necessarily mean we are using non-natural products. Okay? Does that mean we don't add certain chemicals to our wines? No, because in fact we do. But we are restricted or limited under biodynamics and organics about how much. And we only use it if we ultimately have to, as far as preservation of the wines, allowing our wines to age, and things in that particular category. In fact, if you look at a lot of the approved chemicals that are allowed in wine production, a lot of that's geared towards mistakes in the vineyard. Okay? Peaking too early, or peaking too late, having to correct acids and sugar levels and alcohol levels and other things now in the production side of the wine. Okay? So it goes back to making sure we get the right quality fruit out in the vineyard, because once it shows up down here, obviously you're not going to be able to put it back. Okay? You have to deal with what you have. So let's take a walk in here. We'll talk a little bit about barrels in here. Because we reuse barrels. Now, we also know, because we couldn't run our credit cards, and you all got comped as a result of it. We got no electricity. That's really the only man-made. That's the only man-made input we have into this cave is the light switches, if they were on. This is not a natural cave. Okay? We built this cave. Actually, a Colorado mining company built this cave back in the early 2000s. Came in, did a survey, started drilling a year and a half later, handed us the key. We handed them a $4 million check, and here's your 29,000 square feet of cave space. Okay. Well, I guess we got a little bit of light here. So, anyway, what you are experiencing, if it was whatever it was, 58 degrees out, constant temperature in here is 60 to 65. Okay, it's kind of nice in the summer when it's 100 out there. Well, it's 62, 65 in here. 70% humidity. Okay, that is natural. This is what you're getting living several meters under the ground. That is ideal if now your life investment is being stored down here. And what you are smelling is wine, not because we're dumping it on the ground, it's because there is a natural evaporation. Okay, hence the humidity. Lower the humidity, more evaporation is occurring. These barrels are in fact breathing, albeit slowly, otherwise we'd have liquid coming out. But that is part of the aging process. Okay, it's why you need that humidity and the ideal temperature in that 62, 65 to now store your wines until such time as it's ready. Okay. Again, slight subtle difference. Business models. These wines are ready when it's ready. Okay, those grapes are ready when they're ready to be picked. It's not a business model in a larger production where every year you've got a target date, you put wines on the market at a certain time in a certain quantity. Okay, so one of the subtle differences between the two. If we didn't have this cave here, we would probably have to be, like a lot of wineries, be in the warehouse business. So where are we going to sacrifice this amount of space out on the property in lieu of vines or in lieu of the other things we have going on out here? Okay, so it's just one of those business decisions made back in that early 2000s with a little bit of risk, right? Because you had to project yourself into the future, saying, one, you're still going to be in business in a decade, and we built this 3 times the size at that point, assuming we were going to be producing 3 times the amount of wine. So hopefully both sides of those stories came true. We are still in business, last I checked, and we are producing. In fact, the Imagery was just being born at that particular time. So in addition to Benziger, all of the Imagery's wines are in here as well. You've got 18 vintage in here, you've got 17 or 2000, most of 2017, and there's still some of 2016 that are being aged in here as well. let's talk a little bit about barrels, because I got a date for you in a few minutes back in the tasting room. There is no wine in here that has been haphazardly thrown into a barrel just because it's empty. Okay? All of these barrels have been specifically pre-selected for the wine that's now going to get introduced to them. So what do I mean? We don't build barrels. Cooperages make barrels. Coopers, they actually individuals that assemble barrels. And why we may be building cars and airplanes and automobiles and all of those categories, predominantly with robots. Humans don't build these. These still get made the old-fashioned way, okay, by hand. Okay, the same way we were putting barrels together 1,000 years ago, with some exceptions. Okay, we got nice sanders that make them nice and smooth, and there's a machine that helps us pull these bands on. Otherwise, in the construction of these barrels, when we fill out a custom order form, and that's what we do, we specifically order barrels for the types of wines that we're now going to put into them. And it's not just a function of French or American oak. No, there's about a page and a half of other things that we're now going to select. So when a cooper puts these barrels together, it arrives from France, it arrives from East Coast United States as a stack of wood, okay, as staves. You can barely see where these staves are now what? Shaped into position using what? Heat, fire, water, steam. They bend the wood staves into place, they notch them off at the ends. And then as they put the staves into place, they now what? Insert or put on the metal bands. The only thing holding this barrel or holding the staves together, where you can see the seam lines in here, are these metal bands. There's no glue or nails or anything else. And the fire part, okay? What am I talking about in the fire part? Yeah, they obviously need fire to heat this, the water to make the steam and have the temperature to shape the wood into place. But more importantly, when you're custom making these barrels is what we call toasting. Okay, so we're literally firing the inside of these barrels. We call that toasting. Think of caramelizing the wood, the natural sugars and other properties inside the wood that are now, and then let there be light, right? Okay, we're in business now. Light, medium, dark, okay, those all are adding specific, unique characteristics to this wood that are now being imparted into the wine. So when you go in the taste room and everybody starts throwing around all those descriptors, chocolate and vanilla and coconut and cloves and cinnamon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for the most part, particularly when we're talking red wines, most of that is coming from here. Okay? It's coming from the aging, but it's also coming from the specific wood that wine is now sitting on in these barrels. Okay? That doesn't mean we're adding those ingredients into here. In fact, put your wine snob hat on. If you visit a place that's throwing stuff in your wine, leave. Okay? Go to a place that makes real wine. That occurs naturally. Okay? That's what you want it to do, is occur naturally. It is things that are now, as we call them, the polyphenols in here, they're mimicking those things that are now flowing onto our taste buds. And does that mean it's 100% science that every time you drink wine that's a 100% French oak barrel toasted dark, you're going to taste chocolate or cinnamon? No, because we all have what? Different taste buds. It doesn't mean there are no right answers in the final exam when you get into the tasting room, specifically for that reason. Okay, but there is absolutely a specific quality when we're selecting our wines, we're now custom ordering our wine barrels with specific toastings and specific wood characteristics that the winemaker is trying to develop part 3 of the story. Okay, and that is on their final product that they're producing in their wines, they're trying to get at some specific characteristics and notes, okay, in that bouquet of the wine ultimately that they're producing. Okay, so why age, why barrels, why wood? Okay, in a large production, am I going to be taking every 60 gallons of liquid, or 227 liters is what this barrel holds, sticking it into a $700 to $900 French oak barrel, then hide it away in my cave for 2 years? Probably not.
stainless steel. So this is not a Chardonnay that's heavy with oak and butter. It's more like a Sauvignon Blanc. It's very, very delicate. It's not going to have that real buttery feel to it. Also notice at the finish on this, the San Giacomo family is who we do the business with for these grapes. They used to grow stone fruit orchards, peaches, pears, apricots, plums, all that stone fruit. So into the terroir, all that has been presented after all those years. Notice a tiny bit of an essence of a peach when you finish on this. It's really soft and delicate, and that's from the soil after so many years. Can't call it that in the United States. It's a meritage or a meritage is what we have. Onopias, it's named. It's Native Americans over here. The mountain behind us is the old volcano, and almost all of the trees on that mountain.
Well, my name is Mark Leonardi. I'm the general manager of the Sonoma Valley Wine Trolley. As you can see from your day being spent here, we are a very casual, down-to-earth tour company that brings people to explore Sonoma from the standpoint of wine tasting and riding in an open-air trolley. Based on the 1940s trolley car out of San Francisco, except we don't ride on rails, we ride on the street. We have street-legal trolleys that have been around since the 1980s. We've been in operation for about 5 years now, and keep developing new relationships with new wineries and new places to go. But this winery here, Benziger, is one of our favorite ones. Also sister property to Imagery, and I think you'll find that the next two wineries you go to, Paradise Ridge and Mayo, two smaller family-owned wineries. Paradise Ridge is a little further up in Kenwood, and then Mayo's back here in Glen Ellen. And both because of the nature of the winery themselves, they are very family-run, very small, and they also do a great job and love to take care of our guests. Our tours drive out every day, 365 days a year, 364. We're closed for Christmas and New Year's. But our drivers, like Paul, have been doing this for about 5-6 years. And they're very good at what they do. They're very passionate about their job. Driving a trolley is not always the easiest thing in the world. Like any vehicle that's older, it has its quirks. But they seem to keep them running. Our shop does a great job with keeping them on the road and keeping people happy. And the wineries are great partners with us. The hotels are great partners with us, and we have a great online presence. www.sonomavalleywinetrolley.com.
Our chocolate and wine tasting experience. It's our flagship tasting experience. It's some of our flagship wines and definitely our flagship chocolates. The way the tasting works is you have 4 glasses arrayed in front of you from left to right. We will proceed from left to right, and the chocolates we will proceed from top to bottom. I will make some comments. Hopefully I hit the right spot in terms of this is exactly what you want to hear. If you want to hear less, just say stop it, you give me a headache. If you want to hear more, ask me questions. If I don't have the answer, I will not make it up. But Renee over there is one of the owners of the winery. If I don't know it, he knows. He's going to say hi in a minute as well. I'm going to guide you through this experience. What you have on the, very quickly, one little word on the winery. Paradise Ridge is a family-owned winery, 6,500 cases a year. The main estate is the next wine is the first red on your left. We call it the posse. It is what we call a Rhone blend. Some people call it a California Rhone blend. And it is a Rhone blend. The typical Rhone blend is called GSM, Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. Those three grapes make up a Rhone wine. Now, we have a wine like that. I think we have like 7 bottles left. 15, it's wonderful wine. But it doesn't taste like a Rhone. And there are reasons for it. Rhone is further north, it gets more rain, has a shorter growing season, and it's clay soil. We have mostly gravel, chalk, or volcanic soil here, number one. And it's much warmer, and we have a much longer growing season. So the wine is more fruit forward than you would want in a GSM typically. And it's floral. And a floral wine that's red is relatively unusual. Typically, when I say floral, probably what comes to your mind is Viognier. You open a Viognier, have your nose over the wine as it's poured, it's like perfume or like sticking your head into flowers. So that, notwithstanding, doesn't deter us from trying to make something that's very much like a Rhone. So the winemaker uses the first 2 grapes, Grenache and Syrah, and drops the Mourvèdre. And replaces it by a blend of Petit Syrah and Zin, a little bit of Zin. The Zin smoothes it out, but what I also suspect is that the Syrah is somewhat higher than it would be in the Rhone area, because in order to get the tannic experience of this wine, you would emphasize with the Syrah. So after you have sipped it as is, I suggest you take a bite of the chocolate that comes with it. This is actually a wonderfully pretty chocolate. It looks a little bit like a Christmas tree, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Dan, our winemaker, is my brother-in-law. We pick the grapes when they're just ripe enough. There's a lot of wine, and we do a lot of green harvesting, which is dropping, like the bunches will start getting ripe, and some of the berries will be ahead of other bunches. So we drop the ones that are not going to get ripe when we want them to. So we usually pick at, they consider it bricks, it's kind of a percent of sugar in the grape. There's sugar and acid in the grape, so when the grape starts out in the growing season, it's really small and it's all acidic. And during the growing season, the acids drops and the sugar rises. And then our winemaker will be testing when it's about to be ripe to check on when he wants to pick. But we tend to pick like that Sauvignon Blanc. Did they try the Sauvignon Blanc? Our Sauvignon Blanc is like 12.5% alcohol, so it's really low. All of our wines are under 14%. So he picks them when they're just ripe enough instead of waiting for everything to get ripe, and then that's when you get kind of the higher alcohol wines. He considers picking at just when it's ripe enough, kind of, he uses the analogy of like a peach. Like if you had a peach at the beginning of the growing season, you get some acidity, you still get some nice flavors. And if you have a peach at the end of the growing season, it's got like all the sugar, it drips down your mouth, and you lose some of those pretty characteristics of the fruit. So that's why he chooses to pick at the lower brick level, because he thinks it preserves some of the nice nuances of the varietal characteristic. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's his philosophy. So most of our wines tend to be not as high in alcohol as some other, we'll say, California winemakers. Tend to be a little bit more European in style, in that they have some really nice acidity, some good balance. And then also we try to bring the fruit to the forefront. So we don't use a lot of new oak. We use kind of 1 and 2 year old oak, and then we do this cold soaking, which helps with tannin management. So hopefully we try to go for varietally correct with not too much oak or tannin influences on the wine, so you can taste them when we release them and they're ready to kind of drink. And they also are good kind of food wines that balance out. So you try to keep the alcohols lower, so you can have more than a couple glasses of wine with dinner, which is the winemaker's plan, is a bottle of wine with dinner. No kidding. So, and then the winery, my parents bought the land in 1978. We planted our first vineyards in 1978. We started making our own wines in 1994, and then the estate, our main estate, opened in 1994. We made wines in 91 and opened in 94. And then this tasting room we opened about 10 years ago, because where our estate is not near any other wineries, and now kind of nice houses have filled in around us. So So we were looking for more of all these people going past here, visiting the wine country to try to grab some of them to discover our wines. That's how we ended up here. And then, you know, the fires kind of affected the winery, so it made this place kind of a godsend because the other place is not available. You can't taste up there or anything like that. So that's how we kind of ended up here, and happy to be part of the Trolley tour.
Through the process of riddling and racking the bottles for 3 years. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, I'm going to explain it to you. What happens is we make the Pinot Noir, we age the Pinot Noir, we age the Chardonnay, and then when we go to bottle the wine, we put 70% of the bottle is Chardonnay, 30% is Pinot Noir. We bottle it up and put a temporary cork in. What we have to do from there is we have to send it off to a facility down the road that actually provides the yeast. They put a bottle cap on top and they turn the bottle sideways. And every day for 3 years, this bottle turns every day and lifts until it's all the way upside down, causing those beautiful bubbles in the glass. So that is how champagne is made. It is the traditional method champenois, which is just a fancy French word. And I challenge you guys, when you get back home to your stores in your local town, I want you to go into the stores and look at the wines and look at the sparkling wines and see which ones say traditional method or method champenois. And that if it says that on the bottle, that's the process that it goes through. Henry Mayo is originally from Pittsburgh. He was in the military many moons ago. They're both turning 85 this summer. So he and his wife met in San Francisco. He got stationed at Treasure Island, and his wife Diane is a Sonoma native. And so she found herself going to college in San Francisco, and they met at some event. I'm not exactly sure where they met, but they ended up raising their family here in Sonoma. And after Henry left real estate, he had a career path change, I guess. He ended up going into real estate. And back when he started, this was not the wine country. There were a few wineries around here, but predominantly this was cattle country. This was farmland. And Henry had the great fortune of being able to have a front row seat and watch this valley really change as people were coming over here in droves from Napa County, from different parts of the valley, different parts of the country, coming here, buying land, planting grapes, growing grapes, and eventually either becoming wineries or just farming grapes for a living. And so Henry thought, you know what, we can do that. We have a little bit of land, you know. Maybe we can make a little bit of wine. And so what started was Henry and Diane's master plan of retirement. They thought, okay, we're going to plant some grapes and we'll just sell them. We'll grow the grapes and sell them, and we'll make money, and it'll be great. And fortunately for all of us, somebody actually made some wine along the way, and the plan shifted to opening a winery. So they had a son named Jeffrey, and Jeffrey is still the boss in charge today because Henry and Diane are in their 80s and they're pretty much enjoying retirement, as they should be. But their son Jeff actually is the president of the winery. And Jeff was fresh out of UC Davis at the time. And he came to his parents and said, let me help you open up a winery. And so that's sort of how it all began. So This summer, we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary, which is pretty exciting. We're really proud to be family owned and operated and still be around and still be okay and still be producing delicious wine. So I hope that you're finding the wine today really good. When you use machinery, it doesn't take into account mold or cobwebs or critters or anything else that might get in the way. And when we do it by hand, we can drop those to the ground instead of putting them in the bin. But once they're picked, they have to get processed immediately. So they're brought up to our production building and they go through this machine, which is called a destemmer. Feel free to step closer if you guys want. The way it works, it's actually open so you can see the inside of this. But usually this lid is down and the grapes go into the bin here on top. And they get pushed through this open area here and inside this cylinder. And inside the cylinder, there's these red paddles that rotate. See how they rotate and they push everything inside the cylinder? The red paddles rotate 10 times as fast as the outer cylinder. Causing the grapes to rip right off the stems and eventually fall through these holes, okay? Once they come out of the holes, they get pushed down this way where my hand is. And there's 2 rollers down here. You can touch them if you're brave. And once they get crushed and go through the bottom, they end up in this bin here. And this bin then gets transferred to wherever else we're going next. So every single grape we work with goes through one of these machines before it goes anywhere else. Once it comes through for white wine, let's talk about white wine first. White wine grapes go from here directly into the grape press. And the grape press is where we squeeze out all the juice. It's where we get rid of the skins after that because we don't need the skins for white wine. We typically will use fertilizer, use them as fertilizer, which is kind of a fun thing about living in the valley is the smell.
Mm-hmm. And the flies.
And the flies, yeah, you can't escape the flies. They're everywhere.
That's any farming community.
White wine grapes go from here to the press. From the press, we take all the juice and we transfer it into one of these tanks. These tanks are double insulated. They hold 300 gallons apiece, and they are cold stabilized fermentation tanks. It takes approximately 3 weeks to actually convert the sugar in the grape juice into alcohol, okay? On guard, and you drove right by them. They're in Kenwood. But they actually use this space to age their wine. And all of our wine barrels are up at our estate. We have a large building up there. So these barrels, though, I'm so glad that they're here because we can talk about barrels and I can show you a little bit about barrels. So somebody asked me about the aging of barrels and how long we keep barrels. Before I get to that, I want to back up and tell you what kind of barrels we typically use. We typically buy French oak barrels, and they cost anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 each.
Wow.
Not cheap.
Holy moly.
We typically only use them 5 times, and then we get rid of them.
Wow.
And so it's really important that the 5 times we are using them, we are aging them full. A lot of stuff happens with barrels. What happens when we first get the barrel, they come to us wrapped in plastic with cardboard on the end because they are protecting that oak from oxidating and drying out. They come to us pre-charred or pre-toasted. If you look at a barrel, it'll say something like M+ or MT or something like that. This has to do with the level of charring that happens. So somebody actually takes the wood and burns it on the inside and gives it sort of this smokiness, which we're trying to infuse into your wine flavor.
Do you use those barrels for all types of wine, or is it just particular types?
All types of wine, yeah. But some of the barrels are light or medium or heavy with the toasting. They're all the same size barrels. And it has to do with the flavor preference. I'm so sorry. I just had a big bowl of chili a little bit ago. It's like food coma.
We're so boring.
No, it's not you, it's me. It's also my Monday, so I'm a little bit not awake yet. But one of the things I love to explain to people about barrels, because it's so hard to wrap your head around how much they cost and how we only use them a few times. One of the things that we do is we really try and age these barrels full. And so over the course of the 2 years that a wine is aging in a barrel, we have to do this process called racking the barrels. And racking the barrels is where we physically go in. Let me pull this out. This is called a bung.
A what?
Bung.
Bung?
B-U-N-G. Bung. This is a bung hole. This hole right here.
Like Beavis and Butthead.
I kid you not. That's where the term came from. But we physically go in through the bung hole and actually pump out the wine. Okay? We pump out the wine to filter out the sediment. We don't actually use a filter. We do this old world way of racking the barrels. And racking the barrels means we go in through the top, we suck out all the wine until we start to see cloudiness. Because all that sediment settles to the bottom of the barrel. And when we start to see the sediment, we stop, we rinse out the barrel, we put the wine back in. And obviously we have a little bit of space now at the top of the barrel. So we have to put wine in. And what wine do we put in but the same wine that we're aging? So we have 6 barrels right now of the same varietal. By the end of 2 years, this is going to be 5 barrels, because one of those barrels is going to be used to top off the rest. The other thing to keep in mind too is that every month and a half or so, we actually have to top off the barrels. The wine evaporates and breathes through the barrels. And so we lose a portion of wine, which we refer to as the angel share. We lose that portion of wine throughout the aging process. And we want to make sure we're aging these barrels full because they cost $1,200. Okay? That's very important to us.
Okay, but I'm confused. So where does it suck out from?
From the bung hole
hole
through the
Top
top.
of the hole.
And then, but what do you put it in?
We put it in a temporary barrel for about half an hour, and then we rinse out this barrel, and then we put the wine back in. Yeah.
And doesn't like oxygen in it like that is bad, right?
Correct. Yes. So a lot of these, when you pull this out, if it hasn't been opened in a while, you pull it out and you'll hear sort of a carbon dioxide trying to escape from the barrel. The other thing too is, if you think of barrels the way tea bags work, if you were to reuse a tea bag over and over again, by the 4th or 5th time you're making water. Same thing with barrels. So when we use them the first time, a brand new barrel, it's going to be big, giant oak flavor. By the 4th or 5th time, it's going to be no oak flavor at all, pretty much. And so what we end up doing is when we're making wines, we try and be consistent with what we did the year before. So for example, this is a Carignan, 2018 Carignan. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna do the same recipe we did last year for Carignan. So last year we did 2 brand new barrels and 4 slightly used barrels. I'm just making this up. But we're gonna do the same recipe the next year.
Got it.
So that we are and before we actually bottle, we stir them all together. Okay.
So you probably won't use all 6 brand new barrels. You'll use some old, some new,
Correct.
mix them together,
Correct.
and then that way it gives you balance for your wine.
Correct. If you've ever seen a wine label that says like 40% new oak or 40% French oak, maybe they use some American oak or some other type of oak, it'll tell you that on the label. It should at least, or in the wine notes, for example. So, but wine barrel and aging process is one of the most important parts of winemaking, because this is where all the flavor comes from, is from the barrels. Prior to the wine moving into a barrel, it's a lot of